everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of wiKOPedia. Of interest to us this week is the guys from FSG. Are they good for Liverpool? What have they done for Liverpool? What haven't they done for Liverpool? So, Steve, I don't think we can talk about FSG without mentioning Hicks Gillett first and what they got us into. So, can you just give us a short summary of your thoughts on Hicks Gillett and that last day where we thought we were going into administration?
So, at the time when Gillett and Hicks and Gillett took over, it was the right time to move the club on to somebody else. Or we thought it was the right time to move the club on to somebody else, because David Moyes couldn't keep up with the investment. Football was ever changing. It was becoming more and more financially competitive. That was pretty much self-funded by the Moyes family, the old Littlewood's pools. So it was the right time to think about making the change. The due diligence wasn't done particularly well on Gillett and Hicks. To be honest with you, they came to Liverpool, in my opinion, with much the same remit between the two of them as FSG, which is to turn the club around and make it a much more financially stable club with a much more financially viable product, and at some point in time, get out and take a big shed load of cash with them. It was a bit like that Michael Keaton bloke who tried to buy Man United. What they wanted to do and what they could do were two completely different things. They came within an absolute ace of completely destroying our club. And I give big kudos to Spirit of Shankly, who played a big part in working with the club and the fans to try to get our club back to the right people. So, you know, one of the biggest institutions in world football, never mind your English football, was a day away from administration, and they would have just sold Gerrard the same week to clear the interest payment, because that's what it was. It was an interest payment that nearly tripped us up. So, yeah, a very close near miss. Nearly destroyed everything that we love. What would we be doing tonight if that had happened, Dave? We wouldn't be doing this, would we? So they nearly ruined us, mate. Absolutely ruined us. So good that things change, but grass isn't always greener, and you should be careful what you wish for sometimes, eh?
Yeah. Same question to you, Jamie. What was your thoughts on Hicks and Gillett and what they did was before FSG took over?
I'm acutely aware of my current feelings towards them. At the time when they took over, obviously they came in with a barrel full of promises. They're going to put the shovel in the ground in terms of building a new stadium. They're giving it the old hand gestures as if they were flicking money all over the shop. It's going to take this, and this. Came in with an absolute promise of investment into the club, into the city. It never transpired, mate. Accrued monumental debts and took us to the brink. So yeah, Hicks and Gillett are not names I care to think of all too much, because there's absolutely zero positive association with it. I'm just glad that they've been consigned to the history books, mate. That's a very smeared chapter in the history of Liverpool Football Club.
So we're going to FSG now, Steve. Give us a summary of what they've done while they've been here in the past 10 years. Wow,
there's quite a lot to cover there in that statement, isn't there? So obviously they came in and steadied the ship for a number of things. They wrote off the debts that we had. They addressed the wage bill. We had some very senior players on some absolutely ridiculous money. I mean, we all loved 𝕗𝕣𝕠𝕞. That guy was on a big fat contract coming towards the end of his career, and one of the remits was to reduce the wage bill. So in terms of what FSG have done, well, obviously they've developed the ground. Anfield isn't recognisable these days to what it was sort of 15 years ago. They've recently completed work on a new training ground. You've got to have the facilities to match your ambition. They've made the club strong on a financial standpoint, gone from the purchase price of 300 million to Forbes valuation of somewhere in the region of about 2.3 billion. So yeah, they've worked their magic. The club is as strong as it's ever been. You look at the players on the pitch. We paid big money for Van Dijk, world record at the time. We paid big money for Alisson, world record at the time. They weren't frightened to give us that initial cash injection to allow Jurgen Klopp to realise our dreams and to make us believers as opposed to doubters. I will always be grateful for what they've done. That club is run properly and should be a blueprint for every other club in the country. They don't do things where they put the club at any financial risk at all. And for that, I am grateful. So could they speculate a bit more? Could they throw a few more players into the mix? Possibly. I don't think Jurgen Klopp's that manager. I think if you said to Jurgen Klopp, there's £500 million to spend, he probably wouldn't spend it. He buys players that fit his system, not egos and people who are going to. For instance, if you said to Jurgen Klopp, there's £200 million, do you want Neymar? He'd say no. Why? Because Neymar wouldn't fit in with the Liverpool project, the Liverpool style of play, the Liverpool game plan, systems and all that good stuff. So, yeah, I don't think the money is such a big issue, and I see lots of it on social media. But for me, the way we are at the moment is just fine.
Same question to you, Jamie. What have they done for LFC for you in the last 10 years?
Well, what haven't they done, really? They've taken an absolute monster that had fallen way behind the times in terms of its commercial achievements. You had the likes of Manchester United, sorry to bring them up, but the likes of Manchester United who were really capitalising on the turn of the Premier League, the inception of the Premier League. They really knew their business. They knew what they were doing, and they capitalised on that. We were way behind, so we were playing catch up for a significant amount of time. Now, they're business people, firstly and most foremost. They are business people with vested interest in sports ventures, of course. We're all too familiar with the association with Red Sox, but what they are very good at is constructing a business plan, which obviously will have an impact on the sporting achievement of the club, and by natural turn, the value of their investment. What they did is they seized upon what was essentially a very, very, very appealing project. Liverpool Football Club had all the nostalgia, all the history, all the foundations of being an absolute colossal investment. They got it at a snip. They basically purchased the debt, and then they moved forward. They would have been acutely aware of rumblings relating to the financial fair play. There's a good reason why John Henry was a big advocate of that being pushed through, that notion being pushed through. It fits beautifully in with his business ideals, his business model, and that's absolutely how they're running the club. Well, within its means. Not everything is perfect, but you need to look at us in a commercial aspect. What he did, or what they have done as a business, they've recruited the right people for the right roles. You've got your Billy Hogans and the likes. They've gone out and they have absolutely tore it up. We are right up there, billion pound corporation plus. Brilliant, absolutely fantastic. They've invested also into the city, the surrounding area, and obviously the training ground, Anfield. We are financially on really, really good grounding. We are worlds away from what we were, and it's all positive. Let's not be silly about this. This isn't a romantic thing that they've done. It's not. They haven't bought Liverpool Football Club because they love the club. They've bought it because it was a viable, realistic business opportunity, and they are maximising that. And I would imagine, especially in terms of this Billy Bean thing, if they come in, he'll likely look to float it as well on the stock market and what have you. So, could be very interesting. But like with a lot of businesses, mate. They've gone in it to make maximum profit. It's not a forever project. They will achieve what they will perceive to be the market ceiling in terms of value. At that point, they'll be looking to get sizable investment in terms of selling a large stake in the club. or of course selling the entirety of their ownership. So it'll be interesting to see how that moves on. But we're going to be talking about some absolute monstrous figures if, as and when that does occur. So it'll be interesting. But yeah, what they've done is nothing shy of brilliant.
You mentioned recruitment there for a second, so we just want to turn that recruitment on its head. And what do you think of FSG's transfer strategy over the last 10 years?
Is that one for me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. In terms of obviously it was ridiculed for quite some time. The Moneyball concept and all of that. They came into something that was essentially on its knees. As I said, commercially, we were way off where we should have been. They can't conjure something out of nothing. What they want is for the company, the club to be self-sufficient. So yeah, they're gonna look to shift people on before they bring them in. It's balancing. It's simple balancing. Anybody with a business will do that. You can't just keep adding things constantly. So I've got no qualms with any of their recruitment policy at all. I mean, look at us now. We're Premier League champions. Do you know what I mean? It's difficult to be overly critical at all. Yes, at times, sometimes it's usually because we're comparing it to other clubs, your Man Cities and the likes. You're kind of looking at a player and you're like, just buy him. But the hidden cost behind it all is ridiculous. On site, actually, there's a whole article on it which details ingoing and outgoing transfers. The costs involved are mad. So they do it the sensible way. I anticipate, like next summer, I anticipate there to be a relatively big investment in the window, but purely on the basis we've got two players who are going to be sort of 28 in terms of Sadio Mane and Mohamed Salah. They're business people. They're going to know that they're probably at the optimum value at that time, and I'll be surprised if going into next season we got both of those players. At which point we who knows what figures we'll be getting, and then they'll look at the likes of your Mbappe's, might be stretching it, or your Jadon Sancho's and things like that, who you'll be getting for similar money. Maybe it's lesser, but you've got them again for the next sort of 6-7 years before he's hitting his optimum period. And it's just a conveyor. It's a conveyor of investments in rotation of players. They're very smart. I think they've put together a really good team. I know there are issues with Rodgers during his time there, not necessarily meeting eye to eye on how things were done. But that's by the by. I've got no complaints. I think we've accumulated quite a squad now. Not all world household names. Absolute. I mean, look at Wijnaldum, Robertson, Salah. To a point, he was doing well in Italy, but that was Italy. He was written off as a product of the Premier League. So yeah, it's statistics. They're looking at statistics, and also that's marrying very well in terms of Klopp's coaching style and his ability. They're merging the two, mate. And to be honest with you, they're creating pure magic.
Same question to you, Steve. What were your opinions and thoughts on FSG's transfer strategy?
I'd echo a lot of what Jamie said. One thing I would say is I took some time to read an article about 18 months ago, 2 years ago, and it was about how John Henry runs the Red Sox. Basically, he treats his businesses like a trader's desk. So this optimum time to move a player on is absolutely pivotal. And I see the man on your mug there, Salah, looking at me down the camera. That is very right in the sense that we don't buy players without there being a return on investment. So the thing that drives FSG, drives Liverpool Football Club, drives the Red Sox, and if we do the merger with the guy that Jamie mentioned before, and we grow the brand and we bring another investor, they will continue to do that. I agree that one of the star players will probably exit in the summer, purely because for two reasons: optimum money, and they won't allow them to go into the final throes of their contract and not get the money for them. So they will take 100 million plus to shift one of those, but I suspect it will happen. Those players may look for another challenge as well. If we were to win the Premier League again this year, we've already won the World Club Championship, we've won the Champions League. You're not going to keep a Salah or a Mane from the clutches of Barcelona and Real Madrid, and the romance of playing for those clubs, which still exists, even though they're not the forces they were. You're not going to stop that from entering into their head. For instance, Mane might go and earn $450,000 a week at Real Madrid, so he can go and build hospitals and improve education in his home country, so and do the things he's been doing through his foundation. So return on investment is massive. The thing that drives Liverpool Football Club is a balance sheet. And that's it. They're businessmen. Simple as that. It's a balance sheet. Jamie quite rightly alluded. They didn't buy out of sentiment because John Henry has a 25-year love affair with Liverpool Football Club. They bought it because it was a good business proposition. What I would say, and it's going a little bit further away from the transfer thing, and I'll get back to that, is Liverpool Football Club has now reached the point where there are no potential buyers out there to buy the club as a single entity. There's no profit to be made from a club that's reached the level it has. It's one of the most high-value clubs in the world. You couldn't buy it tomorrow for £2 billion and then hope in the next year, 2 or 3 years, to sell it for £3 billion, because it just won't get there. They've realised all of the potential from an infrastructure point of view, from building the club, building its assets, improving the ground, improving the playing staff, improving the infrastructure. So, yes, I agree. I think one of the big players will go. I'm not unhappy with their transfer strategy at all. I understand it. I get it. I never want to be in the situation we've been in before. So if it takes losing a marquee player to bring in another marquee player, and there's a story that Mbappe will be towards the final year of his contract at the end of the season, that could see a massive swing in terms of the price that he's available for. And all of the journalists in France will tell you Mbappe is making noises that he wants to play for Liverpool. So put all those things together, and that will whet the appetite of the people that listen to this pod and excite a few and make a few say he doesn't know what he's talking about. But there's an option there to have a look at that. So does the strategy work? As Jamie said, you're World Club champions and current Premier League champions. Of course, the strategy works. So I'm not going to sit here and rip them to bits. I'm no FSG out man at all. I think they've been a breath of fresh air for the club, and I understand why they buy and sell in the way that they do. I really do genuinely understand that.
To you again, Steve. In the tenure over the past 10 years, there have, I believe, been mistakes by FSG. Do you feel the same way? And what are those mistakes?
Well, there have been mistakes. One of the mistakes is this pre-season when we lost Alisson for sort of 6 to 8 weeks. We do lose players from long-term injuries, and we have opportunities to replace them. But I don't think that's a decision that's made by FSG. I think that's a decision that's made by Klopp. He's not a man just to go out there and flash cash and buy players for the sake of buying players. You can't say the ground's a mistake, because it isn't. To move would have been an absolute travesty. That site, that ground's got so much history and so much heritage. It's such a storied venue. There's absolutely no way at all you'd go and put them in the middle of Stanley Park. We would have just lost everything. If we get to 60,000 by hook or by crook, and that's as far as we can go, then that's 60,000 diehard Liverpool fans turning up every week, and I'm all right with that. They made mistakes. Yes, they made mistakes. They made mistakes in allowing the friction with Rodgers to exist. They made mistakes with the exit of Luis Suarez, for instance. But that guy wanted to leave. What they did was they had a player in Suarez, for me, that was making noises he wanted to leave. They went and bought a load of players to play with him, and the guy that suffered the most was Markovic. Markovic was bought to play with Salah, to play in the spaces, Suarez, to play in the spaces that Suarez created. But when they sold Suarez, there was no game plan that would have included the Markovic. He was kind of lost. He was a bit of a lost sheep. Our tactics and our game plan didn't work for him. They made mistakes for me in the publicity around Sterling's departure. You don't tell the media that Sterling's agent said you could pay him £500,000 a week, and he absolutely would not sign for you. You don't tell the media that Sterling is insistent that he wants to play through the middle, and guess what? He doesn't play from the middle for Man City. So that's a load of nonsense. So yes, there've been mistakes, but I'm very much a cup half full scenario with FSG. The club is stronger than it's ever been. It can compete with everybody in world football today. All right, we're not going to go and get a checkbook out for £200 million like Man City have for 3 fullbacks. We're not going to do that. That's not our style. But Klopp would thank you for it anyway. So I think the mistakes have been few and far between, and I think the pros far outweigh the cons. And I'm certainly not one to get hung up on the small things that they could have done differently as opposed to done wrong, if that's the way I want to approach that. Yeah, as long as they're in the club, that's fine. They will make a mistake if they float it and they bring in multiple stock shareholders, because you only have to look at the troubles Arsenal have had with 3 or 4 big wigs all running the club. It needs to stay under FSG, and okay, there might be 4 shareholders within FSG, and Billy Bean might join that board. Don't float it, and don't invite wild investors from the Far East. And that for me would be, if they did that and they kept the club for another 10 years, I'd be happy, mate.
Same question to you, Jamie. What things do you think FSG have got wrong, or would you have done differently?
Yeah, it's again, I would say it's for the large part, it's more a case of things that they may have done differently as opposed to incorrectly. My primary issues were where they seem to lose complete sort of traction with the fans for a period of time. I remember people voting with their feet in relation to season ticket prices, the furlough scheme, things like that, and they fail to look beyond profitability at some points. But they are just seriously driven, business-focused men who are looking to make the most money that they can out of the venture that they're involved with. But other than that, there's not a great deal for me to really moan about. Again, just to touch upon a point that Steve made there in relation to making comparables with the likes of Manchester City. Yeah, he's absolutely right. We're not going to be spending 300 million on fullbacks or 500 million for a whole new back line. What they have done and done brilliantly is they've recruited a manager, a coach who has absolutely unwavering belief in his ability to coach. He doesn't need, nor does he want, that level of investment. It's a perfect marriage. It's a perfect marriage. He's proven that as well. It's not just some sort of theory he's got. It's like, well, do you know what? I'll make the best of what I've got, and hopefully it works out for me. The man knows he can take the average player. Look at Wijnaldum, again, Andrew Robertson. Granted, obviously the base level of talent is there, but he has taken players who would be ordinarily considered as very much middle of the road. He's turned them into top end players. Andrew Robertson's arguably the finest left back in the game at the moment. So I think they've, just going back to their ability to recruit, I think they were very clever. They knew what they were doing with Klopp when they brought him on board. Ultimately, they've had to invest in the team. The team were in a desperate need of a spine, goalkeeper, central defender, top end midfielder, and somebody up top. That needed investment. It took a little while for that realization to come to fruition, but ultimately it did. You need that. But look, he hasn't just had the money thrown at him. It's something they've considered over time. They got prime fee for Coutinho in order to further strengthen our own team. That's sort of like finance, like the Van Dijks and your Allisons and things like that. Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I can't complain. There are things obviously where you say, do you know what? That may not have been the best thing you could have done. But they are business people. They're not people from Liverpool either. And they're not well, they certainly didn't start out as Liverpool supporters. So their main interest is the business element, and they will do everything they can to enhance the value of that club. And that's what they continue to do. But they are given the tools. But what they don't do is just give him sort of just keep adding tools to his tool bag, mate. They're sort of, we need to make space here. You need to shift some of that in order to replace it with better quality tools. That's what they're doing. It's working. We as fans, we want success on the pitch. We want longevity of success on the pitch. We want to see the club growing commercially. I don't see where they're falling short on that front. How I see it, they're ticking all those boxes. So, yes, they could do some things differently, but ultimately, mate, they're getting all the big bits right.
So, Steve, just to wrap up then, we've just had 10 years from FSG. How long do you think FSG and Liverpool's relationship will last?
Okay, now this is the interesting one, because we're talking about this project where Billy Bean, the billionaire guy, joins the board and becomes part of that. And then they start to expand their footballing portfolio, and they buy a club, say, in Germany, and a club in France, and a club in Austria, and they put together a portfolio of football clubs. That, for Liverpool, is dangerous, and it's dangerous because it takes away the impetus behind our club, because there'll be 4 or 5 other clubs that are in need of that development. So let's pick one out of the sky, just randomly. Let's say Wolfsburg in Germany, who've had some success in years gone by, and a little bit of a sleeping giant. Not the same as Liverpool, but a little bit of a sleeping giant. I don't want to see clubs joining a portfolio that take all of the resource away that Liverpool have been using to get to where they are now, because we've reached the ceiling of value. I don't think the club could be worth any more if you tried. You could go and buy a £400 million stadium, and yes, it would be worth more on the basis of that. If we see them owning 6 clubs and they put 5 clubs through development, that would be to the detriment of Liverpool Football Club. That is a danger, because those clubs will realise quicker profits sooner than Liverpool will. So there might be a bit of a merry-go-round where they buy a Wolfsburg or someone like that, and they build it up and then they sell it. And then they look at another club and they build it up and then they sell it. So there's a danger for Liverpool there that we could get left behind in a project that was started with us, as soon as get to a point and then become a little intransigent where we don't really go anywhere. So that worries me, if I'm honest with you. It's not necessarily a positive for Liverpool Football Club. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with that one. I also am very uncomfortable, and I said on a previous pod, of their willingness to get involved with the Glazers over projects for taking control of decisions in English football. Again, that's the business side coming out. The Super League thing's reared its head again. That's the business side coming out. Trust me, if the fans are not allowed into the ground for the next 12 months, European Super League, with what we've got now being disbanded by the clubs that have got all of the pulling power, becomes a very real proposition. And it won't go away, it won't go away. So there's some times ahead with some challenging decisions to be made. There's some times ahead with some concerns for me on a personal basis. I guess just going to have to wait and see. I'm grateful for 10 years. I'm grateful for where we are. I'm grateful for the ride we've been on. Most of all, I'm grateful for Jurgen Klopp. I've always thanked him for that. But yeah, phase 2 of FSG's football project will be interesting if it goes down the route it's suspected to. But been a good 10 years, mate. So yeah, long may it continue.
Same question to you, Jamie. How long do you think FSG will stay with Liverpool, and what do you see happening?
FSG, their tie with Liverpool will remain as long as there's value to be gained from Liverpool. They're no fools that have done plenty of forecasting. They'll continually be forecasting against the markets, climates, and what have you. They will probably realise that Liverpool are very close to, if not hitting their capacity in terms of value achievement on the premise of what they are at the moment and how they can expand. This falls, as Steve just alluded to, it falls nicely into their thinking with this Billy Bean incorporation. and becoming some sort of superpower, and bringing in numerous clubs across Europe. For me, Liverpool would be probably the centerpiece of that portfolio. But in terms of their business people, of course, so they will expand around Liverpool if they can't get Liverpool any further. So this it makes a lot of sense in terms of what they're trying to do with the league format, and certainly in terms of the European sort of breakaway league. Much depends really on what's going on with that. If those things get pushed through, they'll find a way. I'm almost certain they'll find a way. As soon as the Football Association, FIFA, all the governing bodies realise, hey, do you know what? We can make some serious dough here. They will find a way of dressing it up and getting everybody on board and pushing it through. I'm without a doubt on that. So much depends on that really. If there's no mileage in it, they'll look to once they're at optimum price, they'll probably look to cash in, but it's going to be an investment level that's probably beyond anybody on their own. So it'll be a consortium job, so it's interesting, mate. As long as Liverpool can make money, or Liverpool can be a channel for them to increase revenues for their business. Then it will continue for many years, and I suspect that may well be the case. But if not, then obviously they'll look to check out.
So this will be the final question now. Firstly to you, Steve. You mentioned them before, so a little bit of a fun question. 2021 season's about to start. Is Kylian Mbappe a Liverpool player?
No, he's not, mate.
Same to you, Jamie.
No.
I'm going to go with no as well. I just don't see him fitting in with the Liverpool model, unfortunately. But so that's us done for today. And that was our talk on FSG. If you listened and enjoyed, make sure you pop over to Apple Podcasts, drop us a 5-star rating and a little review because it really helps us out. Thanks very much, Jamie. Thanks very much, Steve. And we'll see you on our next episode.
Cheers, boys.
Cheers.
Take care.